Hi, I'm Adeline Wido, and this is my video presentation for the second abstract. The article that I reviewed it's called Confidence and Body Language, Signs of Self-Esteem, and it's written by Siri Carpenter, and she was writing for the Huffington Post. The main idea of this article, it's referring to how body language can be used in nonverbal communication and how our body language actually affects the messages that are conveyed with our nonverbal communication. And also how our body language, being nonverbal communication, can affect our verbal communication as well. The article begins with the author relating a story about how she's playing soccer and how no matter what she's doing on the field, if she makes little mistakes, she's very apologetic for everything she does. And she says, "Oh, I'm sorry I passed it to the wrong person," and whatnot. And she goes on to explain how this carries over into all aspects of her life, that she finds that she's generally a very apologetic person. She apologizes to people for things that aren't really her fault and that she really has no need to apologize for. So she goes on to explain how people generally view it as a good personality trait to be considerate of others, but the fact that she's so apologetic is indicative of her being anxious about causing other people discomfort, and that attitude and that mindset is very disempowering as far as how communication takes place interpersonally for her in all aspects of her life. So she actually is presented with this opportunity to go to a seminar. I think they're called empowerment seminars, and so the seminar is intended to teach people to be more assertive in their communication styles. And while she's at the seminar, she learns a few different things, starting with the fact that confident people, or people who are perceived as being powerful, tend to use furniture incorrectly. That tends to be a trademark of theirs. For example, one of the visual examples I can give is that people who use furniture incorrectly, instead of sitting in a chair like this, they would be draped back or leaning back like this, or perhaps have their feet up on a desk. And so they're actually not using the furniture the way that it's intended to be used. But the trademark is that they feel confident in doing so, and that's why it displays power and assertiveness, is because they're comfortable in doing whatever they want, essentially. The next thing she learns is that body language, as I said before, can actually affect how we think and behave, which will also affect how we verbally communicate. But the study that she cites is one that explains that, I guess they've proven that we tend to become negatively, with a negative mindset if we are reaching downward, and we tend to be able to recover happy thoughts when we're reaching upward with an upward motion. They did a study where people were asked to adopt a power pose or a submissive pose for 2 minutes, and the people who adopted a power pose actually had a boost in testosterone levels by 19%, and their cortisol levels, which is a stress hormone, dropped by 25%. So it was kind of interesting to see how even just pretending to pose in such a way can actually physiologically and biologically affect how we behave. Let's see. Oh, another interesting thing that they talked about was that people who've had Botox, and one of the side effects of Botox being that they can't move their face as much. I guess we kind of have the stereotypical viewpoint of someone who's had Botox as having the plastic face, and the relation to this article is that people who've had Botox tend to not be able to mimic other people's expressions, and the author explains that when we're communicating with others, we will actually mimic each other's expressions so minutely that it's almost not very detectable unless you have cameras that can slow down the frames. But point being is that if we can't mimic others' expressions, our mind actually can't process what they might be feeling as well. And so people who have had Botox and can't mimic expressions, they tend to interpret others' emotions more poorly and less accurately in interpersonal settings. So, as she's in this empowerment seminar, the author is given the opportunity to put into practice some of these techniques of actually adopting power poses and learning how to stand in an assertive fashion. So as she's standing in an assertive fashion, she feels very uncomfortable at first, but she realizes how very effective it can be to actually fake it till you make it, is kind of the idea behind this article. That if you fake a power pose, then eventually you will start to actually be and feel more powerful in your communication and in your day-to-day interactions with others. It was kind of interesting at the end when she is given the opportunity to interact with her daughter's softball coach. Her daughter's being benched, kind of, and not being given a chance to play when she can be a valuable contributor to the team. And she's been apprehensive. The mother has been apprehensive to approach her coach about it because, as I said before, and as she stated before, she is very uncomfortable with causing or feeling like she's causing any sort of area of conflict. But so she uses these power poses. She adopts a power pose to these strategies to go stand and talk to this coach as she's relating her concerns about whether her daughter is allowed to play or not. And she says it's kind of funny how even though she was completely faking it and didn't feel very assertive at the time that she was speaking with the coach, she could tell that her adoption of this stance, this power stance, and these traits of speaking in a deeper voice and standing with a more authoritative stance actually influenced the way that the coach would have responded. She says she feels like the coach actually listened and responded to her requests differently than he would have or has done previously. The way that I related it to myself is that I was in the Army, and prior to having been in the Army, I worked as a nurse's assistant in a hospital, which was a very clean clinical setting, and a lot of the people who I worked with tended to have these stereotypical impressions of me being a very girly girl. And I remember when I was conditioning myself to go into the Army, I was very proud of myself for even running a mile. And so these people would kind of jest and poke fun and say how I wasn't going to be able to make it, and how I could never hack it in a tough world. And so what I decided was I was going to fake it until I made it, and I decided to be as tough as I could on the outside, even if I didn't feel it on the inside. And it ended up working in my favor, and by the end of my time in the military, I felt like I was pretty well respected for being a good soldier and for being able to hack it in a military environment and in a less than glamorous, less than clean and clinical setting. I really enjoyed the article, and it was pretty interesting to me, particularly the points about how biologically we respond to these physical poses. So that was it, and I hope you enjoy it.